What's going on, everybody? It is Overreaction Time once again. I am your host, Simon Samano, and look who I got with me for the return of ORT after a couple of weeks off. Just had a big life event, right, Mike? It is none other than the man himself, Mike Bohn. What's going on, dude? How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good. Boom, we did it.
Look at
We're
that.
here. We're married. Yeah, a couple weeks off too. I feel kind of rusty, Simon. I'm not usually, as you know, take this many days consecutively off. So I feel like it's been a minute since I had a microphone in front of me.
Well, you're definitely a no days off kind of guy. It's been a while, but congratulations, man. I hope married life is treating you well. I hope you are ready for your return to ORT. You ready to get this thing going?
I am. Let's do it.
All right, Kamikaze, you know what time it is. Hit it.
I mean, guys, what are you fucking? Is this tonight's stupid question night? Are you guys that fucking stupid? You can't be that fucking stupid. Who gives a shit? One of the dumbest things I've ever read in my life. Fucking common sense. Everybody knows that.
All right, Mike, let's get this thing going here now. Let's start not with mixed martial arts. We're actually going to start with boxing because we had a pretty massive event this past weekend, and that was Canelo Alvarez versus Terence Crawford on Netflix. Huge event. Now, Terence Crawford, of course, tremendous performance against Canelo Alvarez, becomes the undisputed super middleweight champion and had like 20,000 belts on the dice with him, in the press conference afterwards. I can't keep up, but congratulations to Terence Crawford for the huge win. We're not going to focus on the fight itself, though, here, Mike. We're going to focus on the event as a whole because, as you know, this was Dana White and TKO Boxing's first foray into the sport with Sheik Turkey also promoting this event. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit you with this, Mike. Canelo versus Crawford as an event was pretty mid.
I'm going to say not an overreaction with caveating that I did not watch the whole thing from beginning to end. Obviously, there was some overlap with Noche UFC, which I was covering. So, this got my full attention probably towards the end of the Callum Walsh fight in the co-main event. And it is interesting, that we label it as a TKO Dana White promotion. It seemed like everything but if you go back in the history books and look at everything Dana White has said both about boxing, about how he likes to promote combat sports events, and just what this could be. I mean, the pacing seemed to be an issue for a lot of people throughout. As I said, I didn't watch the whole event, but the fact that I was able to cover all of Noche UFC, the post-fight, and then go there, it's closer to 1 a.m. Eastern time than it is midnight Eastern time, and the ring walks haven't even started yet. That's obviously not ideal, especially if you're trying to promote an event like this to a mass audience, people who may not be huge boxing fans, people who are just scrolling through Netflix and maybe see, this is live and click in. How many of those people are up till 1 a.m., on the East Coast and obviously later in other parts of the world as you go deeper into the time zones? Felt like a big, challenge and not ideal. You get concerts with both walkout songs, which is something Dana White has been adamantly against. You get, the podcasts in between the breaks during the pacing, or obviously a lot of desk conversation. And then, the fight was okay itself, but I don't think, knocked the doors off. He didn't look thrilled sitting there ringside. He's on his phone. Like, we're used to him having the headset on, like being able to pick up the red phone whenever he wants to. Doesn't really feel like it was his production in that regard. So, pretty interesting that we see it all unfold that way. But, maybe it goes to show, I think, that he was more brought in as the promoter of this by name as opposed to it being his vision from beginning to end. And I imagine, as people will probably wonder, did this change his very clear perspective on stadium shows? I'm going to guess no.
Yeah, well, listen, I think what you were saying there at the very end is fair. Was he just brought in because he's Dana White and he carries a big name, as opposed to him having a whole lot of say? But that's the thing I'm going to give him a little bit of shit about right here. He had a lot to say during the week. And one of the main things that he said was that the pacing was going to be good. He said, I like when the night moves fast. I'm going to just rail on him a little bit here about the pacing. That's the biggest thing, because for years and years, we've heard Dana White, all the times that he's ever claimed that boxing is dead, he's always said it's because of how slow the events are and you don't care about any of the fights, except for the main event. Did this event, did it deliver 10 fights that we really had to all care about? I'm not gonna give Dana a pass here. Like, if he wasn't brought in to really promote or like have a lot of say in it, and he's there just as the name to promote, then don't make promises that you can't keep. Right? I mean, it took 7.5 hours for this event to end. It started at 2:30 in the afternoon. The prelim started at 2:30 in the afternoon, local time in Las Vegas, and it wasn't until about 9:30, 9:40 that they finally walked out. Which, my goodness, past midnight, like you said. I don't know. Like, this was not a good first impression to have Dana involved in boxing. Fair or not fair?
I think that's fair enough. I mean, obviously, he can only do so much. You can't control what happens in the ring per se. I mean, you could obviously match that differently if you want, but for decisions, like, it's not, we didn't get the big highlight moment. I'm sure this is not what they wanted for, Netflix. They would have loved this to be filled with highlights, but the main event I thought was good enough. Like, if you appreciate boxing, all that stuff, this wasn't the sell for like the freak show element, like Tyson versus Paul or something like that. This was a legitimate boxing event. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you could sit here and think it was an absolute home run. And I think it speaks for itself, the fact that he did not come to the post-fight press conference and speak to the media. But whether it's Tuesday at Contender Series, where we probably won't see him, or 3 weeks from now around UFC 320 fight week, he's going to do an interview or some media at some point, and I'm certain he'll be asked these questions, and I can't wait to hear what his answers are.
I mean, I'm sure he's hoping that the questions will just fade away and it'll be enough time before he makes
it can't possibly, especially if you look forward, right, to this is just the beginning in theory of what boxing is going to be for them, for Dana White, for TKO. And I don't know, it'll be curious, because obviously from what he said last week, these Zuffa boxing, TKO boxing events aren't going to be like the mega fights like this. He basically said it's going to be a feeder league for the rings. So this might be the biggest fight he has his name attached to in boxing for a long time.
Yeah. Well, listen, I will be clear for the viewing audience here. I did think the main event was pretty good. I thought it was a high level chess match, and it had some moments. And if you're a boxing purist, I think you loved that fight. But the event as a whole, that's what this overreaction is focused on here. The event as a whole, for Dana White and TKO Boxing being involved, I just thought it was a letdown. But we will see what happens as I move forward now to the next topic, Mike, which is going to piggyback off of what we just talked about. And you touched a little bit on it, so maybe I have an idea of where you're going. But let me just go ahead and hit you with this one now. TKO Boxing, it won't come close to reaching the level of success of the UFC.
Yeah, not an overreaction. I don't think, how could it, right? Like, it's so hard. What do you measure success in, right? But do I think they're going to start, say they put on 12 events a year or whatever they've alluded to? Like, am I expecting those to go to San Antonio, Texas and pull a $3.5 million gate like they just did with Noche UFC? Like, no, I do not think that's going to happen. I don't think they're going to have a television deal, even though Dana said he's going to have a very legitimate one to announce, where basically all the high level boxing that's going on right now is on DAZN. There's no deals with ESPN or Fox or all those kind of things for them right now. So yeah, like in theory, the landscape is there for the taking to be something prominent, but just the hurdles almost feel insurmountable. I mean, the UFC had such a head start and such a open canvas, I guess, in that regard, to have an upward trajectory, where in boxing, it's completely different what you measure success by right now in the current landscape. So yeah, I hope not too. I think that would be a worse sign for the UFC product than it would be for what amazing things they could pull off for TKO Boxing if that ends up coming to life.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good time for me to get your thoughts, Mike, on something that happened during the week, during the Canelo Crawford press conference. Dana got a line of questioning that he was not happy about from, I don't know his name, Sean Zettel. Is that how you say his name?
Sean Zayler. I called him Sean Z on the other interview I did.
Okay, we'll call him Sean Z. I apologize, Sean, if you're watching and hear this, but Sean Z, props to you, had a great line of questioning about the Muhammad Ali Act and really challenged Dana, and clearly Dana did not want to answer those questions. The one that I thought was really fair towards the end was, hey, if you don't get what you want with the Ali Act, are you really going to invest heavily? What do you think, Mike? What did you think of the exchange and, the challenges that Dana is currently facing trying to get this Muhammad Ali Act? For those who don't know, but basically you got to amend the Muhammad Ali Act in order to run a UFC type league in boxing. What do you think of the challenges and that exchange between him and the reporter, Sean Z?
Yeah, well, the exchange, full credit to Sean for, asking the line of questions, having the courage that he did on that platform, and despite Dana trying to shut him down multiple times. Big respect for that. And everything, like you said, was completely valid to be asked. Do I think if he had somehow got one-on-one time with Dana prior to this, would he get better answers? Of course. I do think Dana firmly believes when he's standing up on that stage that it's not about him. It's not time to ask questions
It's
about the
fair. That is
UFC,
fair. Yeah.
about the fires, which is sure, but also like if you don't want to open up yourself for that, just put Max Kellerman up there the entire time instead of even being there. That's fine too. Sit on the dais, whatever you want to do. Anyways, besides the point, I thought it was all grounded in reality and fair questions, and yeah, it definitely begs a serious question. What will the upside be? What will the level of interest from TKO be if they can't get this legislation cleared? And it seems like with what happened at the California State Commission meeting, that it's at least being looked at. It's not something they're just going to go and get rubber stamped immediately without any further thing, which I think a lot of people were worried about. And it seemed like California was maybe ready to do at one point there. Obviously, they looked into it deeper. Hope Andy Foster, does his full research, as I'm sure he will. But yeah, that's a real question. If this doesn't get passed, what are they going to do and what's it going to look like? It already feels like it's changing, right? From what we were initially presented by Dana, I think back in March when he made the announcement, like we felt like they were going to try to be going, head to head with PBC and stuff Eddie Hearn does and all these other promotions.
No,
I know there's been some back and forth in the media, but he essentially said this is going to be building fighters up and then they'll go fight on the pay-per-view or premiere shows that Turkey Al Sheikh puts on. So I don't really know, like that sitting here right now, that doesn't interest me. I'm not
Like, are
going out of my
you?
way to watch those events, but
Yeah. Are we supposed to get excited? Are we supposed to get excited about like a Dana White's contender series for boxing at the UFC Apex?
yeah,
On a
I don't
regular
know what I'm
basis?
supposed to get excited about in combat sports anymore, to be honest. Like I got into this because I love mixed martial arts and the UFC product, and it seems like everything but is getting prioritized above that, whether it's power slap or now boxing or whatever. So like if it comes, it'll be the same for me, and I'm sure at MMA Junkie it'll be the same. If someone who's we deem notable enough or interesting enough will get coverage, if someone with MMA attachment or routes or is in that orbit, like they'll probably get their things. But I can't imagine a world where we're sitting there doing full play-by-play for every Zuffa or TKO boxing event, like coverage like we would the UFC. I mean, that's not what we are at this outlet or what we're presenting our coverage to be. So
yeah,
we'll see. I mean, we'll take what makes sense, but this doesn't make me feel like I'm gearing up for a future as a boxing reporter more so than mixed martial arts.
Yeah, well, at least for the time being, Dana White trying to amend the Ali Act, finding out that it's not quite as simple as just getting power slap approved.
Nor should it be.
Nor should it be. It's not that simple.
Yeah, that's been there for a long time. So
we will see how that all plays out, Mike. All right. Well, let's move on now. Let's talk about some mixed martial arts. All right. And let's talk about Noche UFC this past Saturday in San Antonio, where we had a main event of Diego Lopes and Jean Silva, an absolute banger that lived up to the billing, right? I mean, they had a heated feud going on. A lot of that surrounded Diego Lopes' identity. He's a Brazilian born, but he trains and has lived in Mexico for a long time. He identifies as Mexican. All that created a lot of bad blood. And in the end, what we saw was kind of a rarity, right? It spilled over into the fight, and it was a hell of a fight for as long as it lasted. But Diego Lopes ultimately got the TKO victory towards the end of the second round, landed a spinning back elbow, which then led to the finish. Heck of a win for Diego Lopes. I'm just going to hit you with this, Mike, before I give you all my points, and let's see where you're at with this. After Diego Lopes' win at Noche UFC, Lerone Murphy should feel nervous about getting a title shot. Think about what's happened.
I'm going to say overreaction, but I feel like he already should have been a little nervous. I actually think this is, of the two results between Diego and John winning, I think this is the better outcome for Lerone Murphy, even though it was an exciting finish and highlight and all that stuff, just because we saw that fight.
If it was flipped, I think Lerone Murphy would be in serious trouble. Is that what you're saying? Like if it was John
Silva had won in that way, I think I think if they were waiting to see if Jon Silva would win spectacularly, and that's why the fight wasn't already booked and announced between, like, they were waiting on something, and I think it was to see if Jon Silva is that guy, push him to the moon. Turned out not to be on this night. He got the setback, and yeah, I just like Diego is awesome. He proves so much to us on this night. I'm always interested to see how a guy comes back from a title fight loss, especially when he's the younger guy facing the aging champion. Like, this is broken multiple people in the past. They haven't come back looking the same. He comes back looking better. So like very impressed with him. I think there is probably another title fight in his future, but when you got Volk, how many Volk fights do we have still in the clip? Like maybe a couple. I think probably till he loses again. If he gets KO'd and loses that belt, could very much see him being done. I want to see him fight fresh guys. Like, I know Diego got the win in between, but we haven't seen Volk fight again. And there is people out there. I mean, Lerone obviously made his statement. Movsar Evloev is very worthy, but he's absolutely not going to get it.
Yeah, he had Aljo beat Brian Ortega. He's kind of in the conversation.
Yeah,
I mean,
Aljo's there.
Yair
Rodriguez thinks he was promised a title shot to do that fight with Pitbull and win. He should have been this guy fighting Diego on this night, but nevertheless, like, he's going to be standing up for himself to trying to get that. So there's guys there. For me, I like the Murphy fight. I think you do Aljo and Diego Lopes after this, and then maybe, Movsar and Yair, and let everything sort itself from there. But Lerone Murphy, man, that 17-0-1 came off a spectacular moment. Like, Dana White can't sit there and say, I sell you holy shit moments, and it's about doing this, that, creating moments for the fans. He did that, everything he could and more, and took on a guy that was super dangerous, that was making his debut. So give me Lerone Murphy and Volk. But yeah, I think that's the most appealing one. I don't need to see Diego again right now.
Okay. Before I move on to the next thing, I don't have an overreaction for you. I just want to ask you about Jon Silva, 28 years old, obviously was on the rise. He was not that guy in this fight, right? But what do you think about Jon Silva still at 28, rebounding from this, and still will he be a UFC title challenger, you think, in the near future?
I don't know about a UFC title challenger, but I think he'll be in the mix in this division for a long time. I mean, dude is so exciting. It would have been real bad if he got finished in the first round with that like mount ground and pound.
Yeah,
sequence.
dude, it was close.
Yeah, my answer is here, but he showed the heart, the resolve. He comes out there in the second looking great. And then who's going to sit here and say they're surprised that emotion got the better of Jon Silva at some point? It was festering, whether it was in or out of the octagon. Hopefully this teaches him a lesson and maybe fighting a little bit more measured. But the stuff he was doing out there, from the elbows he's throwing, the front kicks, like the strikes to the head and body, like, what more do you want? This guy is a fighter. He's going out there to be exciting. I can't wait to see him fight all these dudes at featherweight. He's still very young in his career there. So yeah, give me all the Jon Silva fights against anyone. Does he win them all in a necessary order to get himself to a title fight or to that belt? Maybe not, but like, God, pick anyone out of the top 10 and I'm super keen. Do Aaron Pico, do Arnold Allen, do anyone in the top 10, and it's going to be good.
No, Jon Silva is going to be must-see TV. I guess that's my concern, Mike. As I was telling Kamikaze before this, part of my concern with Jon Silva is whether or not he will ultimately be like a Michael Chandler type guy, where he's there to be entertaining and doesn't quite focus on the win, because he just abandoned his game plan. And from the very beginning, when he threw that spinning back kick, which got him into trouble immediately, I was like, you're on the cusp of a title shot, dude. Like, why are you coming in that wild, And then even the way the fight ended, he's swinging for the fences. He's coming in for the kill and gets busted. I don't know, man. I just feel like that's my one concern. So maybe I did have an overreaction, but I don't know. It's like,
yeah, I think
I also can see him just coming back and starching dudes and getting back to this point again.
Yeah, well, the fighting nerds will have to go back to the lab and kind of figure that out. Yeah, you wonder too, like, he obviously worked for him until it didn't. He had all the wins, like 12 wins in a row or something, was 5-0 in the UFC. But this is a moment, right, where you hit a crossroads. Do you continue fighting the similar way with minor adjustments, or do you make like an overcorrection, and then maybe you're too conservative, too risk averse, and then that doesn't work out for you in its own ways either. So this is always an interesting point, just to see what happens with these guys as they move forward.
The last time he tasted defeat was 2018, well before he was in the UFC.
Exactly.
He was 5-0 in the UFC. We'll see. It's kind of a gut check point here, right? Like, how do you respond? How do you respond to this? And like we said, it's going to be must-see TV. Whoever they pair him with next, we're going to have to watch Jon Silva and see if he can make the comeback. All right, man. Let's talk about another fight from Noche UFC, or let's just talk about a fighter from UFC, and that's Kelvin Gastelum. Kelvin Gastelum got a victory at Noche UFC, won a unanimous decision against Dustin Stoltzfus. It was a, pretty good scrap, pretty entertaining scrap. Problem is, Kelvin Gastelum came into that fight 5 pounds overweight, which, quite frankly, Mike, at this point, this is what I'm feeling, and I'll just share it with you now. It is time for Kelvin Gastelum and the UFC to part ways.
I'm going to say overreaction just because I think it's coming anyways. Whether he has 1 fight left or 2 fights left on his contract, I think they'll honor it. If we're not sitting here getting a few days after the fight any news about his future, him being let go, like Brian Battle style or something like that, I do feel like they're going to hang on to him. But God, like I'm looking forward to the saga being over. Like that's for sure.
Yeah.
We were on Spinning Back Click, and like I think Gorgeous George said something along the lines of like, dude needs to get his act together or something. I'm like, this is the act, man.
It's been the act.
We've been doing this dance for 10 years, going back to when he fought Tyron Woodley, I think at UFC 150 something, maybe even before that. And he missed weight by 9 pounds. And like we had to change the weight class up to middleweight from welterweight. So this has been a constant issue. It can be the most important fight of his career, potential title eliminator like it was with Woodley, or it could be the fight that in theory, like Dustin Stoltzfus coming in, like his easiest fight on paper. It should have been in theory. This is no former contender. Go look at the drop off and like name value.
Oh, yeah.
There's been a few moments he's had like this in recent years of those type of fights, but this felt like the lowest. And he comes in way overweight, barely wins the fight, just like skates by. And you watch there and you're like, this is a shell of the man who like knocked out Michael Bisping. You see the little glimpses of like, the straight punches and the speed, but it just feels like he doesn't really care anymore. And I've listened to interviews with him for the past several years. He always seems to bring up like, maybe this could be my last fight. Maybe they'll cut me if I lose, like all this type of stuff. So I just don't even know where his commitment or level of care is anymore. I just do think that because he's been in the organization for so long, was ultimately
they just inducted him into the UFC Hall of Fame for
all that stuff. Like I don't know what his aspirations are for Spanish language broadcasts, any of this stuff, but like I feel like they're gonna kind of do maybe the Chris Weidman thing, like we'll let you fight one more, like, but please retire after this.
Ask him nicely. Ask him nicely, like, hey, dude, can you just
or like we're gonna let you go. So I don't know if they were that mad at him. I know we have a story up on the site with Daniel Cormier saying like we discussed not giving him a post-fight interview in the cage because of like the as a repercussion, but he still got it. So I guess they're not that mad at him.
Maybe not. I guess. I don't know. I just, like you said, the act is tiring at this point.
I kind of want him to stick around though. Like I think he's tied currently with John Lineker for the most weight misses in UFC history at 4. Can he get to 5, Simon? Can he make that record on the way out? Let's go.
You know what's wild, dude? Honestly, another thing that Kamikaze and I were talking about before the show started. Every time I think about Kelvin Gastelum, I can't believe he's only 33 years old. Like he's in the prime of his career, dude. He feels to me like he should be Jim Miller's age. Jim Miller's 42 years old. I feel like Kelvin Gastelum is 42 years old, dude. He's only 33. Why does it feel like it's been forever that he's been in the fight game? Is it just because we're so tired of this act?
He was 20 when he was on Tough, 21. I mean, it's kind of like those things like Rory McDonald. You see him.
And none of us thought he was going to beat Uriah Hall. None of us thought he was going to beat Uriah Hall in that final either.
He was the last pick, right, on the show. So like all that stuff. But God, it just feels like one of those guys we've been waiting forever to hopefully he hits his potential and like hopefully he can do this. It's all being there. But I don't know, man. Maybe he left a lot more in the cage in that Izzy fight than we thought because that was an absolute war and just never the same. But these issues persisted even before then. So I don't know. It's just one of those careers I think that'll go down as a bit of a disappointment when it's all said and done.
Yeah, 4-7 since that Izzy fight in 2019, Mike, I believe it was.
Yeah,
4-7 since that fight. Clearly, has just not been who he was. Still has a big name, and part of the reason why I think it's time to part ways with UFC is because he would have opportunities elsewhere, whether it's PFL and trying to obtain championship glory there, or big paydays in the tournament, or there's other options, whether it's BKFC
BKFC.
or Misfits or Dirty Boxing. He'll get paid somewhere. So, but hey, whatever his aspirations are, I guess we'll see what happens. As of this recording, there has been no breaking news about him being released or parting ways. So maybe it's not coming. We'll find out. All right, Mike, let's close out the show with talking about Kamikaze's favorite topic, and that is Jon Jones and the UFC White House card, because I am ready to make a declaration here, Mike. So here's the declaration that I'm ready to make. I am ready to make this declaration. Dana White will change his mind, and Jon Jones will be booked for the UFC White House event.
Overreaction. I don't
He
think.
apologized. We're talking about this because Jon Jones apologized.
Yeah.
I know Dana White said, I need guys still that I can trust. I think ultimately he's going to change his mind, man. Come on. How
Maybe
do you
if
leave Jon Jones off this card?
the follow-up phone call is, I'm sorry, I'll also take the fight for half the money you offered it for last time, then maybe we're good. I don't know. And again, where does that lead to? Jon Jones can say everything he wants, but is he still expecting, if Dana does change his mind, that it's going to come with the same purse? Because I think you're only maybe getting one of the two, if anything. So, and even if it was not on the White House card, I don't know if he's getting that same money. I think he really soured the relationship by basically agreeing to fight Tom Aspinall for the money he wanted and everything, and then changing his mind a couple days later. I think it might be a long time till they get over that, but who knows?
He apologized.
Desperate times call for desperate measures. So like if everything, Conor McGregor, who clearly wants to be there, and Dana's lobbying more public support around, one of the 10 million things that could happen to him happens to him before June, and he's not available. And then, whatever, Ilya can't fight. Like, we see things happen where they just can't get the stars to align. I'm sure they like knowing at least maybe they could go to their back pocket to Jon if needed. So could they make it right? Sure. Maybe I'll amend it to not an overreaction, but would that come as a result of being like Plan Z? I think that is more like
this relationship is such a roller coaster, dude, between Jon Jones and Dana White. And I just think, though, ultimately, Jon Jones is his personal GOAT. We had to hear him, advocate so strongly. Anytime we questioned his pound for pound status over the course of like 18 months, he was just, wailing against us, like railing against the media for not putting him number one pound for pound. He's the GOAT. How do you leave the GOAT off what will ultimately be the biggest card in UFC history, assuming it happens? I'm still not set that it's going to happen, but how do you leave him off? How do you leave him off the card, man? He's your GOAT. He's the UFC's, he's Dana White's personal GOAT. I mean, don't you think Donald Trump's going to want Jon Jones on this card?
Maybe. Yeah. Again, there's forces that could make it happen. But when I hear Dana talk about that, like him being untrustworthy and everything that happened recently, I do feel he's being sincere right now, but that's what you're saying. Could he change his mind? Which obviously speaks to you that he's being sincere right now too, if you're thinking he has to change his mind to get there. Yeah, I mean, we've seen stranger things happen, but again, just like I say with Conor McGregor, one of a million things could happen between now and June. 1 in 10 million things could happen with Jon Jones.
Well, I'll throw this out there too. Real quick, Mike. I'll throw this out there before we sign off here with regard to Jon Jones. This UFC White House card probably has to be some sort of combination, I would think, of like maybe 2 or 3 title fights plus some quote unquote fun fights with some big names.
Sure.
Can I just throw Jon Jones versus Alex Pereira out there on this UFC White House card?
Yeah, if you want to do something like that where it was not the title fight, like not the headliner, maybe that gives them some more willingness. Does Jon Jones have the ego to even think of himself in anything else but the main event position on that card? That's probably another question too. And there's different things with no titles on the line when it comes to pay. So
he may have
I
to
don't know, but again, how bad does he really want it is the question. I guess that's where you would start pressing him, because he's saying in every interview that's the case, but it just feels so far away and so many things could happen. And also depends what happens October 25th. If Tom Aspinall goes out there and destroys Cyril Gane in a minute and a half faster than Jon Jones did and gets on the mic and say, hey, Jon, like I beat this guy faster than you did, blah, 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 cuts a great promo. Maybe the UFC
set it up.
Freaking hell. Like he's forcing our hand here. So a lot of stuff is in the way, but man, I don't know. Like Jon, just a lot of concern around him and his ability to actually show up there. Because how many times, it's not even about getting him to sign the contract making the money. He pulled out of the Stipe fight 2 weeks before with the injury. He's had an event canceled less than 2 weeks out because he wasn't willing to face the replacement opponent. Drug test issues pulled him out 2 days before. So
this is why I amended my overreaction. I said originally I had it out as Jon Jones will fight at the White House. And I was like, no, wait a minute. He'll get booked. I think Dana White will book him. Yeah. Whether or not he'll actually make it to the cage is completely valid. We have no idea, but I do think Dana's ultimately going to change his mind.
Yeah. And it might not be up to him to take that into account. There's obviously a lot of leadership at TKO and President Trump, who, if he says this is the guy who I unequivocally want headlining this card, I don't think Dana's going to be like, hey, look at his rap sheet. Does this say you otherwise?
Like, that's the funniest thing you've ever said on this show, dude. As if that would matter at all. All right, man. Well, that's the way to end the show this week. Mike, the time for overreacting has come to an end. Thank you for making it back to the show, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh, good to be here. I can't wait to see what unfolds for the rest of the year and beyond.
Absolutely, dude. And we're going to talk about it on ORT. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and we will see you next time on ORT. Dana, take it away.
MMA Junkie AI.